Hello, team, and welcome to Your Year by Design. I'm so excited for today because I don't know about you, but there have been many workshops I've done over the last 2+ decades. And I don't know if you've accumulated some like end of year, start of year practices. And I don't know about you again, but some of them have worked for me and some of them have not. Or some of them have left me feeling like pressured or like I have to perform. And what I've gone and done is sat with myself and been like, okay, which of those really supported me, or which are the ones that I really liked? For an example, like choosing a word of the year, but it still felt like I know for the last, we're on to what, the 12th day of the year, there's been days where I haven't felt like I've like lived into my word. And so, what does that look like, or what's my like safety net on days like that? Where you'll see throughout the playbooks, it's a unmotivated Tuesday, for example. So today is a culmination of 2 decades of work plus, and I'm excited to dive in. So without further ado, let's begin. So if you're watching the replay, the link will be in your like links that you can actually dive into. Now, don't be intimidated by the number at the bottom. That's actually incorrect, by the way. Let me just delete that one. Know that if you are printing this off, it is in landscape view rather than portrait view. And so as a result, there's a lot less space, but we have a lot of tables and things like that. Really likes to buy like drawing stuff, draw by all means. But me being a visual person, often I'm drawing like tables on my workbook. So why not have an actual workbook you can fill out here? Okay, so let's dive into your year by design. So I guess a little bit of a backstory is this has become more and more important as my years have gone on. I don't know whether you've got adult family, like sisters, brothers, who's just loved ones in your life, and all of a sudden, like you're trying to organize like 7 adults' calendars. In fact, I was just this morning on Facebook, and I might put it in the replay. Is I came up with a Facebook memory of last year of my aunties and my sister and her partner and myself and my partner sitting around a kitchen table where we had our first like family meeting or family catch up, and we were planning 6 months worth of family catch. And what I love about this is that life can get busy. Like it can be really hard as life starts getting into the year to plan things. And so by taking time at the start of the year to plan 6, 12 months, like the things that you know are going to be rinse and repeat or are like what we call life rocks, you've potentially heard the metaphor of like the jar. And, we can fill out the jar with rocks, which are the most important things. There's pebbles. And if we don't take the time to put the big rocks in first, the sand can consume everything. So you'll find, and there's some beautiful videos. I'll see if I can find them and put them in the replay. Is like, if you can put the big rocks in and the pebbles will kind of fit around it, and the sand will literally like take up all the other space. And so that's what we're doing today is we're really looking at like what are the rocks in our life, but also what are some grounding principles especially in what are we coming into now 2026. There's been a lot of rhetoric around like financial sort of situations in business and finances, and with the movement of AI there's a little bit of uncertainty. And so I know for myself one of the biggest things coming into this year is regulation and just like ensuring that I'm looking after my nervous system. And so it's one thing to say that, to set that intention, but what does that look like on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly basis? And that's what we're going to dive into today. So let's kick off. All right, so we've got designing our year. And again, this playbook is about designing a year that really supports our nervous system. And whatever that looks like for you, like if you're feeling super regulated, like you've got your buffers, you're good, you're in a good place, it's just building upon that, no matter where you are. But essentially, it's what are we intentionally optimizing for in 2026? Now, if you're like, TK, what is this word optimize? Basically, it means like, how do you want to make the best out of something given like real time constraints? Oh, sorry, real constraints. Now, constraints can look like a few different things. And sometimes I forget that I am not a robot and I tend to overbook myself or underbook rest. And so, really leaning into some awareness around time, energy, health, money, and capacity is probably my biggest one or my biggest like opportunity for growth this year. Okay. So optimizing is not necessarily about doing more, but about choosing like what gets to matter most. What makes it onto the calendar? What are you saying yes or no to? Okay. So, the first thing to look at for you, and my recommendation is to pause the recording, set a little timer. I got this little guy from Amazon. He's literally the size of my hand. And if I turn him on, you'll see at the top here. Oh, that's really loud. Sorry. There's like 50 minutes, there's 25 minutes, there's like all these different minutes. So you can customize these. But if I set to the 5 minute time and then hit up, you'll see it starts to count down and it's a visual. So my recommendation, set your timer, whatever, if it's a little guy like this, if it's your phone, and get it to start counting down. And I think 5 minutes is probably enough, 10 minutes if you're pushing it. But if you think about like last year or the years that have gone before and looking into now this year, is what would you like more of in life coming into this year? I do apologize, my cat's tail. She just decided to wake up from a nap. And what would you like less of when it comes to life? So, is it less, for example, less like missed opportunities for family? Is it more of, and what you might find is these may be opposites or they may feed into each other, but sometimes articulating that is really beautiful. And then coming into business and work as well, what would that look like? So, what would you like more of, or would you like less of? I was in a workshop recently and someone said they wanted less. I was like, oh, that's an interesting one. Is it the way that you want to work with people, for example? Or maybe it's less one on one and you're scaling into group. So take 5 minutes now just to sit with that. And I'll see you. All right, team. So we should have gone through and done our more of and less of both life and business. So the next thing that we're actually moving into is essentially choosing your priority or what you're optimizing for in 2026. Now, I would recommend no more than three things. In fact, we've got top two things here. And you might find, these are just some brainstorming things for me. So, sustainability and rest is huge coming off the back of last year, where I realized I did not have enough of that. And so, coming back to like what I wanted more of is just more rest and more sustainable work. And so, just have a think about like what came up here for you. What are you wanting more or less of? And just like if you find that you need more than two lines, then obviously like keep going. If you're like, what are these crazy dots? It's just so that I had something there for the bullet points. That's all. But if you find that you need to go to whoopsie daisies, like three, four, five, and so forth, by all means do that. But essentially, what these now become is that these are your priorities. And in fact, and let me just know if my sound dropping out or is it okay? Just give me a thumbs up if my sound's okay. Okay, cool. That these priorities essentially become your key alignment indicators. So where you might have at work KPIs, like or in a previous life, KPIs at work, is these just become your key alignment indicators, which come into the next section here that we'll go into. Now, if you're like, okay, what are all these sections? Just so you know, if you're new to Google Docs, is down here on the side, and maybe yours looks like this. Let me just show you. Whoops. So a hamburger menu, if you open it up here, you'll see here there's like different, I guess, sections. So you've got section one, section two, and so forth all the way down. Okay. So if you ever want to just jump to a section, like you're revisiting it, just know that you can do that. Okay. So I'll give you like 2 minutes now. Pause the recording if you want, and essentially have a think about like what are your priorities? Ideally, no more than you can count on one hand. But again, because we're going to be creating key alignment indicators, maybe you just start with the first quarter. So between January and March, the next 3 months, whenever you're watching this, what do you want to be really focusing on to ensure that you've got a really sustainable quarter? All right, team, good luck. Have fun. I'll see you in a moment. All right, team. So we have gone and done choosing our priority for 2026. Ideally, you haven't got any more than three or four because that's going to be challenging to try and balance everything. Even if you have to chunk it down into smaller time frames, like for the next 3 months or even the next 60 days, whatever you need to only have one or two, and these become part of your key alignment indicators or your KAIs instead of KPIs. And so that brings us down to now section two. So we're down to this section now. Okay. And it's essentially where are you now and where do you want to be 1 year from now? Now, what I found is sometimes like the traditional goal setting had me feeling like, is that too much of a stretch? Am I putting too much pressure on myself? And so, what I've gone and done and created for myself, and this is an invitation if it works for you, go for gold, is that there are two layers. There's like my base layer, And as it says here, like this really is like about sustainability and being supportive and realistic. And then there's the expansive version, which is okay, once my base is solid, like what does like the stretch goals look like, or the stretch version of me? Okay. And so if we were to go into there now, essentially it's like, where are you now? And feel free to switch out if you don't want to talk about monthly income or commitments or number of clients or the free days and white space, then by all means switch these out with other things. And this is where your KAIs come in. So let's say, for example, I really wanted to create, let's say, my confidence levels. And you might say, okay, my confidence and self trust. So I would put here confidence and self trust. And right now, maybe it's like whatever it might be out of 10, or you create your own rating. Where do I want to be a year from now? What would be like my expansive, dialed up version of me? And likewise, whatever your KAI is, number two, put that in. Now, let's see, for example, you had a separate KAI. So you wanted to have a third one. You would just go insert row below and you could create a third one. And I think this is the really interesting piece. So, if you have read Atomic Habits by James Clear, you'll know that he comes from identity. And he talks about the identity, but that identity then comes down to the habits and the things and the systems that you do every day. So, one of the things that I started exploring is okay, what is the identity I need to step into or I'm desiring to step into over the next year? And then what would be like my stretch identity? Now, this could be anything from like, for me personally, it's more of being like that content creator because I realize that there's a lot of room for growth around showing up, being visible. Whereas content creators, that's just their everyday, existence. And whereas right now, I know that I definitely don't necessarily see myself as like the world's greatest content creator. And so things like this, like I would have a look at, okay, what are the identity pieces I want to start to step into? Because once we have this complete, is we start to look at on a very high level, what do I want to start doing, stop doing, and continue doing? Now, the really interesting thing about this is this will start to tell you the stories that you believe need to happen in order for this to come true. Now, you can probably appreciate that you probably have shortcuts in your expert genius that I don't know about. So, for me, let's say that I look at the scales and I've started doing this every morning. I'm tracking my macros, which is a thing I never did before. Uh, Tracking my weight and macros was a whole like level of expertise I didn't even know existed. Like, in fact, I avoided scales like the plague because I didn't want to actually have that judgment on myself every single morning. But now I realize, oh, it's just like a number. Like, I've had to do some work around it. But again, if someone who is like a nutrition or a well-being person might have their own ways of like, let's see if I like right now I say, okay, instead of like this being a monthly income, maybe it's like the version of myself that I look in the mirror and I want toned and sexy or whatever it is for me. It's cool. It's like, okay, that's where I want to be like a year from now. Maybe expansive might be like abs, in her full like assassin era, being able to do the splits and like all these really cool things. So like, let's just take it out of the context of business a second and go a bit rampant and wild here and talk about body. And the things that I think I might need to start, stop, and continue doing, this is when then I can start to look for like mentorship or coaching to be like, okay, is there knowledge gaps or shortcuts or just habits in general and systems that I'm not aware of that may actually prove or disprove this? So know that this isn't necessarily gospel. It kind of just says or shows you what is the blueprint I'm running, what is the thinking or programming I'm running of how I get from here to here or even here. Okay. So it's just intel. And then what I would love is if you're feeling brave, either shoot this through as an email or shoot this through as like however you want to send it through to me, but feel free to like screenshot this and screenshot these because this is a really great way. One of my favorite ways actually, and a coach revealed this many moons ago, is don't just come to your mentors with like, I'm stuck, help. Like if anything, you want to say, hey, this is the challenge I'm having, and these are the 2 to 3 ways that I'm thinking I might be able to solve it. And this is how we teach or we learn to get coaches or mentors to help us fish and not just like catch the fish for us. Because it's essentially your thinking and how you're processing the world that needs to be upgraded, not just the problem itself. Because the next time you have a problem, you're going to need to go to that mentor again and be like send help versus, okay, like how were they thinking about it versus how was I thinking about it? So that was a really long rant. All it's to say is write down your KAIs with the things that are important. If monthly income isn't important to you, you don't want to necessarily track that, or you're happy with what that is. Number of clients. The commitments is just like, what does your calendar look like on a month to month basis when it comes to delivery? So for me, I've got the sought after squad. That's at least 2 commitments a month of a workshop and an implementation call. And where do I want that to be a year from now? And you might decide, hey, actually, I've got multiple offers. I want to break this down more, go crazy. Again, right click and hit insert row below. But essentially, then also, I want you to put your own indicators in here. So whether it's this confidence, the self trust, I've already imposed my own 3 days in white space because that's really important to me. And then what is the identity you're operating from currently, where you want to be a year from now, and then what's like your expansive data up version. And then coming into what do I need to start, stop, and continue doing? And knowing that, feel free to screenshot this, send this through, because there might be some shortcuts or ways of thinking that you might not have considered when it comes to this in order to go from here to where you want to be. All right, team, have fun. I would probably give yourself maybe 10 minutes on this. So set your cheeky little clock for 10 minutes. Whoopsie daisies. And go from there. I'll see you soon. Alrighty. Okay, team. So you have done your directional snapshot. You've gone and looked at your different areas, whether you've put in your key alignment indicators, you've got one, two, multiple, whether you've shifted out these or kept them. You've got your right now, you've got your baseline, and you've got your, okay, if I was to live all out, expansive, what does that look like? And then from there, starting to look at the gap. Okay, so for me to get from here to here or here to here, what do I need to start, stop, and continue doing based on your current knowledge? Now, this is where also, just so you know, booking in a one-off call with a mentor, like you might not need to undergo like 6 months of coaching, 6 weeks of coaching, whatever it may be. You might just say, hey, do you have like a one-off 90-minute intensive? I've got my areas of where I currently like what my focus is right now, where I want to go. This is like my current game plan. I would love you to almost audit my thinking, audit my plan. So that would be how you could potentially use that, whether it's in any area of life, your finances, fitness, health, well-being, relationships, whatever it looks like. This could be a way to actually proactively take charge of that. And if you have a way of demonstrating this is my current thinking to a mentor, they can come in and actually be like, okay, here is from my lens some things to consider. All right, moving forward. Now, I can appreciate there may not be a blank space of yours, particularly if you've written words, but it's just got a page break here. We're moving on to section 3, which is your internal operating state. Now, one of my favorite coaches of all time, Danielle Laporte, she reverse engineered goal setting quite a few moons ago. And she had this body of work called Core Desired Feelings. And what she realized is that one year when she went to like do her vision board and set her goals, is that ultimately the reason why she was setting those goals was to feel a certain way. And she was like, well, feelings are things that we can feel in any given moment. Why am I putting a 6 month, a 9 month, a 12-month goal like out into the future in order to feel those feelings when I could just feel them anyway? And so what she did was she has this whole process. And if you want to go Google it and go down that rabbit hole, is essentially it's unpacking your core desired feelings. And I found this a really beautiful practice. I think I discovered it nearly 10 years ago, give or take. And it's something that I always like to come back to. And I find that my words don't tend to change too much. Like sacred has always been one of my words. Like I want things that I do to feel not just intentional, but like sacred. Like there's a real like to it. And so there are certain like warrior or like a warrior spirit, particularly when I'm showing up in the gym and on days when I'm like, oh man, there's not a whole lot. Like, I've got this whole assassin warrior thing. I don't know if it's reading a lot of Fourth Wing and, crazy romance novels that have come up in later years, but there's definitely that vibe as well. And so whatever it is for you, what I would invite you to do is to potentially look at like what are these base operating states. Now, I can appreciate that sometimes people are like, oh, you shouldn't really relying on feelings. And so that's why I've really gone with, okay, what are your operating states? Like, what can you really access regardless of, and you'll see here as well, like, what are the things that could be really accessible for you that you don't need a whole lot of motivation as your base operating state? And then we'll talk about like the cool stuff in a second. And so for me, I was really optimizing for sustainability. So what internal states would need to be prioritized? And there's like, go to ChatGPT if you want, especially if it knows you well. Like have a think about, because there's like 1,000 different words and things like that. But just have a look at like what would be your cocktail of states. Again, date them for like a couple of weeks, couple of months. Be like, for the next 60 days, these are going to be my internal operating states. And I know for me, like feeling, like grounded, like having something that feels grounded for me would be really beneficial for my nervous system, but also having this like playfulness. Like playful for me has been one of my words for like since I was in my teens, late teens. So have a think about like what your little cocktail might be. And the next step after that, because part of me is like, okay, it's one thing, and I don't know about you, if you've ever taken a workshop and you've written like a whole bunch of stuff down, whether it's your goals or whether it's like, your client avatar sheet, and you're like, what do I even do with this? If you're wondering that, we've actually got a way to bring it into your daily life. But essentially, before we do that, you can see a little stop gate. This is why I love playbooks. They keep my thinking on track. Is once you have your states, whether they're these ones, whether they're other ones, write them in. So my state one, state two, state three. And if you have a fourth state, write it there. So mine would probably be sacred. There would be sacred, probably be my grounded one. There would be playful. Um, there would probably be, I'd probably have here brave as maybe my one. And just do a quick check. Like, do these states require constant urgency, high stimulation, or pressure to perform? Okay. So it's just a little check in to be like, especially on a unmotivated Tuesday morning, as I call it, it's not quite Monday. It's not even a Wednesday. You could even do an unmotivated Wednesday because we're only halfway there. Is, do these states feel accessible? And the reason why this was important is because I had a mentor last year be like, what's your word of 2026? And I landed on the word audacious. And I really love the word. I was like, cool. Like, I really want to focus on visibility, like stepping into the content creator. But I was feeling really under the weather and not well coming out of last year into this year. Like, I was burnt out. And audacious for me just felt like it was so beyond what I was able to access that I was starting to put a lot of pressure on myself of like, I'm never going to be able to live into audacious. And so coming back to these base states, this is like between like burnout and audacious. It was like a level that I could access. Like, okay, I can access still a feeling sacred. I could access a bit of playfulness. I could access a bit of confidence and bravery. Like even bravery probably might have felt a bit edgy, but it's a step down or a few rungs down from audacious. And so if you're the kind of person who loves words of the year, by all means, go in, do that. But if you're also someone who, has in the past maybe overcommitted and or a word of the year feels like it's a lot to live into, just have a look at, do you need like an in-between rung just to support you on a day-to-day living? So again, how we talked about our base layers and our expansive layers, we've got our base layer here. So our base layer of expansive operating states. And then if you want to go for gold, have an expansion word or an operating state, have that as well, and claim that. So I'll give you a couple of minutes now to kind of work with those two things. And then we'll talk about essentially how do we bring this into a daily practice, which is the thing I love. All right. Have fun. I will see you soon. Okay, team, we are in section 3. You have just done your internal operating state. So you've gone and chosen, if you so wish, again, all of this is a choose your own adventure, your potential 2 to 4 operating states, even if you're just dating them for the next, 2 months, 3 months. And then we've performance checked to make sure that those states don't require constant urgency, high stimulation, and pressure to perform. And then if you want to, you can go into your expansive word for the year. So it's almost like if I felt resourced, supported, and grounded, what higher state or word might I be open to exploring or really stepping into this year? Now, like I said, we're in section 4 now. Is how do we bring this into a daily practice? Like, what do we actually do with these words so they don't just get lost in this beautiful start of year intention setting process? And how do we really ground it and bring it into our everyday existence? And one of my favorite techniques I was ever taught was this idea around open-ended questions. So our brain does not deal with not knowing the answer to things. I don't know if you've ever had experience of like you've seen someone, you're like, what is their name? Or a name of a movie or something like that. And you're consciously thinking about it for a couple of minutes. And if you don't find the solution, all of a sudden, randomly, like, a couple of hours later, the name pops up. You're like, where did that come from? But also, thank you so much, brain. So, your brain has been unconsciously siphoning through, however it does it in all its glorious ways, the answer to that. It's an open ended question when you're like, what is the answer to that? So, our brains are like love, part hate, probably having an actual open ended question. And so that's what we're really utilizing in this technique. So the idea is to take a post it note. Now, I don't know about you, but any post it note I have ever bought has not been a post it note for very long. It's like not sticky. And so these ones are ones that you can get in Australia from Office Works. And what they are is they're not sticky, but they're magnetic. And so it kind of looks like a bit of paper on one side and then it's like clear on the back. But it sticks to almost anything. Like on the thing here, it says like static charge, like paper that clings to anything is literally their tagline. My recommendation, they come in all sorts of pretty colors like purples and blues and uh, pinks, is to get this and to write your states on like them, like have like state one, state two, state three. So I would have warrior, sacred, and brave maybe as my three states. And then either write this question on a separate one or train yourself to think about. But essentially, you're asking yourself this question every day. Now, you might decide instead, and they sell these at Office Works as well. This is called a 3x5 card, and they're like index cards. And so, what I was taught is to write, whoopsie daisies. Let me do it this way. Your three words in the middle. So I would have um, brave, warrior, and sacred here. Fold it like this. Sorry for the ASMR. And then on the outside is to write this question. Now, I would choose one of these two questions. So, how can I experience even more braver, or even more of brave, warrior, and sacred? Now, ideally, you want to keep it in the same order the whole time. Or how can I continue to experience even more? Now, what's really important about these questions, and this is a bit of neurolinguistic programming or NLP coming in, is you'll see the words even more or continue. So this language presupposes you're already experiencing it. So it's just like a real finessing tool, but it's really beautiful. And I might keep this in my pocket all day. I might keep this in my diary that I take everywhere pretty much. And this lives just near me. And so anytime I feel the urge or I see it, I just ask myself the question. And what it does is it activates your RAS. If you Google RAS, it's like your something reticular activating system. Let's have a look. Activating system. And you can read it, reticular activating system. So it's basically how the brain filters information. You can read more about it, go crazy. But essentially, that is what we're doing is we're activating your RAS. So now, before we go any further, grab the nearest piece of paper. Doesn't matter if it's an index card, a post-it note, or just rip a bit of scrap paper off. But commit to like putting those three words and then which sentence or which question you're going to go with. And think about, obviously, when you put it in pockets, they run the risk of potentially going through the wash. Not great. But have a think about, okay, if I was to play the movie of my morning, where am I going to put this card so I can see it every single day so that it can serve me? All right, have fun. I will see you for the next section very shortly. Okay, we are up to section 5 now. You are smashing it. Okay, so we've just done section 4, which is all about taking those base feelings, or even if you want, substitute out states 1, 2, and 3 and just put your word of the year. Like, how can I be even more audacious today? Like, if you're feeling really resourced, like what we like to call above the line. So one of my energy mentors, Julie Lewin, she is a international like medical intuitive, I'm pretty sure is the right word. And she used to say, and I love this analogy about being above and below the line. And her rule of thumb for me was don't make any decisions when you're below the line. And so, what she had me do one day when I was above the line, and I'll explain what that means in a second, was essentially go create a list of things that I can do that were free and, minimal budget to help me get above the line. And essentially what above the line is it's I like to imagine like if my life battery, like my kind of like my phone battery, but phone battery only goes from 0 to 100%, yeah? What I found was way better because I was so often and I used to pride myself on like burning the candle at both ends, is I would pretty much my baseline would be like on 0% if we're going to go by the phone analogy. So what I started doing for myself is going, okay, on a scale of -3 to 0 to 3, where am I at? And what I felt was like, so for me now, above and below the line is like, am I depleted? Am I below zero? So it's like if you imagine like a petrol tank, it's probably in some people's minds similar to like the phone analogy, but for me, I feel like you can almost like run on fumes, and the fumes is like below zero. And so I always check in, especially when I need to make big decisions or financial decisions, like, am I above the line? If not, okay, what can I go do to feel rested, to feel rejuvenated, or at least get some support? So I'm not making this decision like alone or without like, having a second brain. So that was a bit of a tangent and a half, but essentially is if I'm feeling above the line, I might say, for example, ask this question here, whoopsie daisies, of my anchor word or my expansive word. So, how can I experience even more audaciousness, or how can I be even more audacious today? But if I'm like, not so much in the tank or I'm, below the line, I would probably feel more into my base level states of like sacred, warrior, even warrior might be a bit too much depending on where I'm at. Okay, moving on to section 5, base systems that support this year. So in here, you would put your base states. So I go sacred, warrior, bravery. I might tweak that one slightly. And I ask myself the question, if I was consistently operating from these states, what habits or systems might naturally support them? So again, coming all the way back up to where we had to start, stop, and continue choosing, which was this bit here. Start, stop, and continue. This is a similar but different in the sense of we're asking ourselves, okay, what might be with my current knowledge? What might be a habit or system that helps me feel? And you might just go one by one. So, sacred. So, how can I feel sacred on a daily level? How can I feel sacred on a weekly level, a monthly, and a quarterly? And then for me, it's like, okay, when it comes to business, how can I bring in that feeling of feeling sacred in business on a daily level? Is it at least once a day sitting down and just closing my eyes and just thinking about what are all the lives I want to touch and like calling them in and creating this feeling of like not transactional, but like, hey, like this is a human who I came into this planet or came into this world to assist with for however long or short it is. And so for you, having a look at, okay, what are some habits or systems, again, coming back to atomic habits, what are some habits or systems on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, or even a yearly practice that can start to feel into these, both in life and then in business? All right, have fun. Screenshot this. I can't wait to see what yours looks like. All righty. All right, team. So you've got your base systems. Now, again, I recognize that we are operating off the knowledge that we currently have. Feel free to screenshot this and send it through, but also know that we are going to start to plug these into your calendar unless you have already. So my recommendation is, especially if you're watching the recording, press pause and be like, okay, cool. How can I start to plot this into my calendar? Like, do certain things happen on a Monday? Do certain things happen on a Friday every week? Or do certain things happen like right before bed? Like, does it become part of your wind down or wake up routine? Put those in, especially if they're monthly or quarterly. So if you've got like quarterly, for example, let's say they're like self check in days or, excuse me, or like days off, you're like, okay, I fully recognize I need to have a full day off. Book that in your calendar now. Like, book it in would be my biggest recommendation. Also, talking to myself here. Okay, all right, let's move on to section 6. So, this is something I saw on Instagram at the start of the year, and I was like, this is amazing. And it's bingo cards. So, the idea behind this is, and I had one designed, so I'll pull it up in the next section while you're all doing your bingo cards. But the idea behind it, and I did 5 by 5. So, you'll see down here, believe it or not, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares by 5 squares. But the idea behind bingo cards is like, what are the experiences that you want to have or like how do you want 2026 to be defined? So I recently did a workshop with Taki Moore, and one of his buddies talks about misogi. So I feel like, what is this word TK is saying? Misogi is a Japanese word, um, and it has its traditional like meanings. Um, it's a traditional ritual of like purification. But then people have actually started this misogi challenge, which you'll see comes up. And the idea is like to do something meaningful, but might also be challenging. And so, what a lot of people have started doing, especially in the business world, is like, what do you want 2026 to be? So, for Taki, his was the year that I wanted to, the year that he wanted to, not me, learn how to fly a seaplane. And for me, I was like, okay, well, that's going to be expensive. And so this idea of having like, well, how do I want to define 2026 by one single thing kind of felt like a lot of pressure. And what I love then is I came across the bingo cards, and we've got two types of bingo cards. And what I actually did was I sat down with my family. I printed off this design, which I'll show you in a second, and you can print one off so it looks all pretty. And we sat down on my birthday and we all filled out our bingo cards. And it's essentially experiences that you want to have. It could be in life, in business, when we come back online, I'll share some of mine, but I can remember one of them was to go glamping. Like, I don't know if you know, like the Lotus tents. Like, I want to go there. Like, I've wanted to do that for years. And so, if you were to think about and obviously have a read through here, but we're essentially bringing out like play, curiosity, and growth. Like, but growth for growth's sake, not growth because I want to grow my income or whatever it may be. It's like you're doing it because it's fun and playful. Okay. And also ensuring that, like, if you think back on 2026, it wasn't just another year, but it's actually a notable chapter in your life. Like, I know 2 years ago, I went to Korea and that became like a really defining moment. It's like, okay, cool. What's going to be some of the defining moments or some of the defining experiences of this year? So think of the first one is kind of like your lived year. Like, what are the things that like you can do that aren't like too much of a stretch? Or maybe you want to go big and go bold and absolutely do that and play all out. But it's essentially like, what isn't going to be too taxing on my resources, specifically financially? And then what I explained to my family, because they're like, why are you doing a second bingo card? And there's a book actually and a whole concept of it's called 10x. Let me just go into the book. And by all means, feel free to read through this, but it's that concept of like 10x is easier than 2x. And probably going to butcher the concept. So by all means, go away. It looks like the guy has a TED talk. So maybe go and actually have a quick little read of that. But the idea is that sometimes it's easier to actually just go big than to try and incrementally grow. And so what I did was I did my 10x or my expansion bingo. And this was almost like, okay, if money wasn't a limit or if I could just go all in on this year, what would that look like? And that looked like, booking my Camino de Santiago. So they have this like big hiking trek in Spain. And it's like, or in Europe, it goes over a couple of countries. And so like booking that for like, whether it's next year or a year after, but like booking it in. If anyone who is a millennial out there grew up with Coyote Ugly, the actual movie is I always had this dream to go to New York and learn how to bartend. Even though I don't drink, I don't plan on being a bartender. I just wanted to like learn how to mix drinks. A very random fun fact about me. And it wasn't until recently where we were rewatching some of our childhood films and I saw Coyote Ugly. I was like, oh wow, that's where that dream came from. And so they have a school over there called the European Bar School, funny enough. Even though it's in New York, they've got this, the European Bar School has like all these establishments. There's like some in Australia, but there's something about learning how to bartend in New York and it's a 4 week lived in experience. So essentially you pay, I think it was like 3 grand the last time I looked. And so for 4 weeks, you live in New York and you learn how to mix cocktails. And I don't know why, but that's been on like my bucket list. And so booking that in would be one of the things that I would put there. So this is a fun exercise to do with your family. I will see if I can pull up and I will link it in here into like the link in case you want to print out my poorly designed one. I essentially just went into AI and said, can you please create this most basic thing ever? And spit it out. And I was like, that'll do. But it's a really beautiful one to do with family and loved ones because what we ended up doing at the end was it was completely by accident as we passed each other like around. So like I got mum's, my sister got mine. And we kind of went around the circle and we each had a pen and we looked at each other's bucket lists or bingo cards, I should say. And I had a heart was like my little key. My sister had a little star. Mum had like a dot. And we would heart, dot, or star the ones that we wanted to do or we could do with that person. And so now we're starting to create like, really meaningful things in our life and in our year, not just for ourselves, but with those we love. And so this just became a really beautiful practice that I think I would want to do year on year because like I learned things that like, on my sister's heart or my mom's heart that they've always wanted to do. And I was like, I had no idea that was even a thing. So it just creates these really beautiful connections. So 100% like do this for yourself, but also do it with friends and share it because it just creates the most magical conversations. So I look forward to seeing what your bingo card is, and I'll see you in just a moment I'll show you both the design and I'll share some of mine. All right, have fun. All right, team. So this is the really basic version. Obviously, you can go into Canva and make it look super pretty, but if you want just this version, by all means, feel free to borrow this one. I thought it'd be fun. I've got my two printed out here just to share some of them. In fact, it's really funny is you have like your lines obviously here, like this part here. And then I got really excited hearing about my mom and my sister as they shared theirs. I started to like go extra up here. So mine's definitely more like I don't know, 7 by 6 sort of situation. But in case you're curious, start a Substack was one of mine, run Facebook ads. Um, if you know anything about Fourth Wing, it's a book and people love it and it's told by one perspective and there's a lot of fan fiction and I didn't even know fan fiction was really a thing. But it's how like, Twilight was the original book and 50 Shades became was a fanfic that became what it is now. And so people essentially take like inspiration from the main one and write these fan fictions. And this one is told by the male perspective of, so we got a female main character and there's a male main character, but you never really hear his perspective a whole lot. And so someone has gone and written the first book, Fourth Wing, from his perspective, and I love it. And my girlfriend recently learned how to bind books. And so you print off the fan fiction and you can bind it so it becomes like a physical book you can read. All is to say, the reason why I'm telling you this is I want to bind that specific uh, fan fiction book. So that's on my list because that will like help me to like learn the new skills of book binding, which as a book girly is super exciting. But also like I love this book and sometimes my Kindle dies. And so having it physically there on my bookshelf is amazing. I want to do a multi-day hike. So Overland is like the extended, like the expansion version. So if we're over here thinking about expansion, uh, so my base bingo says multi-day hike. My expansion version has both the overland track, which is like a 7-day hike down in Tasmania in Australia. And you are like everything you carry is what you have. They do have some cabins, but just know that basically you carry everything, like your food, like all your bits and pieces. So it's pretty intense. And then the Camino in Spain would be my second multi-day hike, which is on my expansion version. Um, Other things are glamping, doing a pottery class, being able to do a pull up. So just know that these don't have to be business. They could be fun, like random mini adventures just to say why not. In fact, I can't remember who it was, but one of the girls that I came across or stumbled across one day on Instagram was like, I want to be the coolest person I know. And it's not like the wealthiest person or whatever, it's the coolest person. And when she was explaining this, it was just like all the random adventures or stories. It's mainly the stories that she had picked up along the way. And so I kind of like that as like a goal or a little like thought to keep in the back of my head is like, how can I be one of the coolest people I know for myself? Is just like, what are all the mini adventures I can create or pick up along the way? So that is expansion bingo or your lived year bingo. Definitely recommend A, doing it, B, printing it out, keeping it somewhere, but also doing it with loved ones. Now, there's probably the bingo part where, like, if you get one line, you get a prize or you reward yourself, but I just think it's just cool in general. And I like the visual of it way better than doing a bucket list. So that's bingo, which takes us on to section 7. So section 7 is all about starting to really block this into our calendar because it's one thing to like do all this intention setting and do all this start, stop, continue, but then how do we actually start to change how we're showing up in the world? And one of the things I love is the idea that like what gets booked or what's in your calendar becomes the container. Takimore has this thing that cash follows your calendar. So, however you want to think about it, essentially, whether you're a physical planner, and as you can see here, I've got some recommendations of what I am, but I'm also a digital planner, but actually getting things in, starting with your life's big rocks. Now, however you work, my calendar is a bit crazy, but I live and die by it, especially because people can book appointments into my calendar. It's very important for me to actually keep it, what do you call it? Like, up to date. But I have different colors for different things. And what you're about to see is probably going to be a kaleidoscope of craziness. And yes, I can appreciate that a lot more space can be in things. But like this week, for example, I've got camps coming up, I've got flights. There's like shifts and all sorts of things happening in here. There's like performances I'm seeing, and then there's like my space to wind down. So, however you best design your calendar, get that in. For me personally, I have a wall calendar. This one here, it's like humongous, and it lives on the back of my door. And the reason why I love this is for like camps, like big blocks of things. This is the thing that I actually take to my family yearly appointments. So when we sit down, we're like, okay, let's get everyone organized. When are our family dates? We get that out. Also, if my partner's away as well, like sometimes he goes on trips, so I like to block that out. And so this just becomes like a big bird's eye view of what does the year look like. So you might not be a big picture to like detail. That is how I process. And then I have this monthly calendar. This is something I've actually started doing this year because of what I'm about to show you. I love paper as well as digital, and I love being able to see bird's eye view. So this was the monthly calendar, this link here from Officeworks, because I was like Officeworks and I was like, this looks really cool. But there's also a cheaper one on Amazon, which is the one linked here. But however you want a calendar, obviously, you sort your calendar situation out. But things that for me are really important is I get my birthdays in. So once you've got everyone's importance birthdays in, feel free to tick it off, especially if you want that dopamine hit. Any holidays, both for yourself, but if you have young people like school holidays, get that in. Hot tip is if you are working, Google like best times to take holidays to maximize your public holidays. I always, for some reason, I don't know if it's the Facebook algorithm, but I always get a post of like, here's how you can get like 100 days off, but only taking like 20 days leave. And I send that through to my sister who's a lawyer. I'm like, hey girl, here you go. So look at that. Like, get your holidays booked in now. One of the things that I am most guilty of is not actually getting these two periods in, is my time off and my recovery. So that's a big thing. One of the things that I have started and I'm quite good at is getting my loved ones booked in. Date nights, probably not so much. And so that is going to be a priority this year beyond like anniversaries and obviously significant other's birthday, but date nights. So anything for you that's really important. Hair, well-being, getting those teeth cleaned. I see you, people who are putting off the dentist, get that in. And then any classes you'd like to try or anything like my pottery class, I would start to look at, okay, when could I maybe do that? So get your big life rocks in. The other thing would be to look at is your rhythms and your repeats. So have a look back on your start, stop, and continues. Have a look at, was it section 5? Let me go up for a second. Your base systems. What do you maybe need to start to block out on a weekly, daily, monthly basis? So you'll see here, for example, I've got like here, wind down. That becomes my non-negotiable. In a moment, I'll show you how I start to like block out my week or my month, I should say, based on the business. So just starting to get those things in. Also your quarterly planning or your no meeting days or your CEO days, whatever that may be for you. I know that certain people in a week, they will have one day for client delivery because you can appreciate that creating content and delivering client work, like whether it's a one-on-one call or a group call or a teaching call, those are very different sides of your brain. So some people have actually been time blocking their days, being like, okay, Mondays are my CEO days, all my life admin, all my random stuff. Tuesdays becomes my content creation day. Wednesdays is when I deliver client work. Thursdays is when I start to do like, reach out or building my audience or going on publications or, trying to get on podcast guests. And then Financial Friday. So having a look at like, what do you want to start to do? And it may not be the whole day, especially if you work elsewhere. It might just be like, this is my deep focus of today. Like Mondays is life admin, Tuesdays is this, Wednesday is this, but starting to work out what is going to be your cadence and date that for at least the next 3 months to start to see what's working for you. Now, other thing to book in now is because you are here, book in Tuesday, June 9th. I'll have the link very shortly to you. But essentially, we're revisiting this workshop. We're going to check in halfway, see how we're going, what needs tweaking, changing, and so forth. We may not go through the full thing. We'll see how we go. There might be some bits and pieces that get tweaked. But set a check-in day for you. Maybe you want to do one at the end of quarter 1. So late March before you go into April. Yep, definitely did March, April. Yep. You might want to book in a check-in date. Okay. And then finally is your big business, big rocks, and starting to think about that. So in part 2 of this, so this is workshop part 1, because what I wanted to do, I realized, okay, we're going to completely like blow people's minds or like befuddle them. It'll be too much information for one whole workshop. In workshop 2, we're going to really break down your offers and how you've designed your business. But right now, you might already have business commitments. For me, for example, the Sought After Squad is a 12-month commitment. I know that there's already one workshop and one implementation call a month. And so I've started, like, I already know all those dates for the rest of the year. I've actually gone and booked them into my calendar and started to create those Zoom links. So have a look for yourself is what have you already committed to? And then before you go and create any new offers, know that we've got extra things coming up. But by all means, don't stop creating offers. We love that, especially in January. But things that you want to think about, and I think so often we forget, and I'll show you what the screenshot looks like in a second, but you don't just have the delivery. Often you have to prepare for the delivery. Like if I'm running a workshop, let's go over here for a second, in the second week of February, I'm starting to book out. Ideally, it would be here, but I'm away for a camp and I've got a workshop here. But ideally, I'd be starting to block out 2 weeks beforehand. What am I preparing for that workshop? And then therefore, the week before, I've got workshop promo. So we'll talk about that in a second. But just think about, okay, I've got like my delivery, but what do I need to prepare in advance? And I've got some examples here. Now, similarly, you've got promotion and sales, for example. So if I've got this workshop here and I want to promote it, that's that week beforehand. That's when I'm promoting it. But when am I actually preparing the promotional material? So this is how you can start to create a weekly, monthly, however long cadence, is to be like, okay, I need to start to like book in prep time, not just like, oh, I get to the week, I'm like, oh, today's promo day, what am I supposed to be doing? Like, it's like starting to prepare and look after yourself. Again, for me, this year is about sustainability. So how can I start to front load so much stuff so that I'm not scrambling and creating that stress for myself? Now, other things that you might want to start to prepare now is, for me, I will start now to look at, okay, when might I do some mid-year sales? Maybe end of June. All right, so let's say, what's the month before June? May. I'm going to start to think about what are my offers coming into June and getting all those sales pages, email sequences, whatever it may be, written up. Also, Black Friday, if you believe in it, book that in. That's normally end of November. Okay, so when do I want to start to think about my offers? Probably in mid to late October, so I can start to create the sales pages and things like that. Similarly, if you have business anniversary promotions or a milestone moment, maybe hit a certain follower count or a certain sales milestone, you might want to run a sale. So just having those in the back of your head. These are probably a little bit more tricky to place in the calendar, but I guess having the back of your head. And similarly, birthdays. This happens every year. I'm like, okay, next year needs to be different. Is the idea of doing a birthday sale or a birthday something something. So my birthday was last week, the 8th of Jan. And so looking at, okay, coming into December, what do I want to maybe create for December? Now, December, you can do 12 days of Christmas. You can do an end of year sale. I could do a birthday sale. But actually getting those in, because I definitely was guilty of like a little bit burnt out in December, and B, in like wind down mode. And so starting to front load those things so that I'm not having to like think of things while I'm in wind down mode really helps. So, and then any learning. So I have certain mentors that I love to reset courses around presenting and things like that. So those are in the calendar if you all know those dates. I can appreciate that not all mentors will tell you the dates of their calendar. They may not know them yet, but if you can get those in, get those in. Okay. But essentially, you're mapping out delivery, preparation, promo, and any learning commitments into your respective calendars. Now, you will get this template as part of the recording. And it's two parts. One, it helps you with the calendar side of things, but two, it also helps you with what your home play is. But just know that essentially this is what my calendar, like my monthly calendar, would look like. And these are the things that I start to think about. And so if I was to pull over, this isn't complete, by the way. This is just like me mapping out a few things. So I know I've got this workshop here. So last week, ideally, would have been the main focus would be in the promotion, but also rest. And I would have been preparing the workshop. This weekend, I go on youth camp. So that becomes my pretty much sole focus. But there probably will be a little bit of promo around part two of this workshop. So I might say workshop part two. And then this allows you each day when you're planning your week. I like to go into on a Sunday and like look at what do I need to do for my week ahead. And I'm really like time block my days. I'm like, okay, cool. What am I delivering or what am I selling or what do I need to prepare? And then brand build or brand maintenance. Let's just say for whatever reason, maybe you're not selling something, you're just like delivering value. This just becomes delivering value. Okay. And so for me, that tends to happen on the last week. So when I'm promoting like freebies or things like that, that would be like my brand building. So whatever your cadence is, just know that this only goes up to March. You can obviously continue to go build it up. It's just an example for your visual example of like what are all the different things that for maybe you to think about and like how do things overlap. So for me is I look at what am I delivering first and then what needs to happen to prepare for that delivery. And that includes like preparing the delivery, but also then preparing the promotion and when am I promoting. So that's how my brain like reverse engineers. And then I'm like, okay, cool. Where do I need rest? So rest probably needs to happen the day before, maybe after workshop, so that I come in feeling really rested. But however you want to run your thing. So that is calendar. I know that was like a hop, skip, and jump. So what I'm going to do is send you on your home play and then wraps up part one of our workshop. So let's talk about section 9. So section 9 is like your home play, but essentially all we've done so far, excuse me, is we haven't really necessarily tackled revenue and goals yet, but we have started with potentially the most important things, which is ensuring your nervous system and your priorities are locked in, your internal operating states, and what is the kind of year you want to have, balancing both your fun and your play with like the doing and like the work, I guess. So now we need to start to look at your numbers. So your home play between now and the next workshop is to actually go in. Now you may already have these. This might be scary for you, but what we want to do is get a personal financial snapshot. Now, this is particularly important if you are looking for your business to fund your lifestyle or replace a current income. By all means, feel free if you just want to skip this part, by all means. But what I found really interesting is that when you start to like fill this out, and I'll show you an example in a second, you start to see like how does each month worth of spending, like what do I need in order to be able to fund my life? Okay. And so, especially if wealth building has not been a big value of yours, know that that's like the first category up here. And for me, it's been something that's been a huge focus coming into last year and especially into this year. I always wanted wealth building to be like part of my values. And every time I did it, I was like, oh, there's not a whole lot of evidence. So what you'll see is anything that's coded in blue, like, sorry, that's not blue, that's light purple. Don't touch that. Okay. So you'll see here, leave those purple cells alone because they auto populate. Anything in cream you can populate. So let's probably the most important one that everyone does because long-term investing may not be accessible or available to you, or you may not have a strategy. Superannuation or 401k in the States, maybe that automatically gets paid into by your employer if you have an employer, but your emergency fund. Let's say my emergency fund, I wanted to have, let's say I wanted to put like $100 aside every month. Okay. But this is an adjustable spend. All right. What you'll start to see is like, see how $100 now populates over here. And so this starts to be like, okay, cool. Now you'll see here, it says 3-month breathing room fund. This has been so imperative to me. Don't mind all these little bits up here. This is like the formula. So don't touch that. Hence the reason why it's purple. is this 3 month, the goal is it will automatically populate what a 3 month breathing room or buffer room is for you based on everything you put in here. So if you're one of those people who's like, you know what, I found for me that I had a habit of constantly saying yes to work because for some reason, like I know I just felt like I had no breathing room. And so starting to create and build out this fund has been game changing for me to actually give myself permission, like not just like mentally, but like on a psychological basis to be like, we have breathing room. Like, why are we not taking a day off? This has been game changing. And so, what this is being, you can see here, it's coded to do is to take your entire monthly expenditure, so nothing from the top, but anything that you put here, and times it by three. So, as you start to fill out, like I know I get car registration, it happens, it's like $800, and I think it happens in March. And so, what you'll see here is that in March, if I go to March, see how yearly expenses is $800. So right now I'm only spending $100 each month, but in March it goes up to 900. So it's super cool. I love it. I'm such a nerdy spreadsheet geek, but if you don't want to do it, by all means, feel free to like leave it out. My insurance, I went down to third party, but that comes out in December. And so again, all these will start to populate. So this can be really interesting as well as be like, okay, cool, $800 insurance. That works out $67 a month or $15 a week. So these are just like nerdy little numbers. But essentially here is like all the different drop downs. And if you find that you're in your yearly expenses, that's something here, like you want to add something, you can come over here and say, adding this. And then what happens is adding this becomes a category for drop downs. So if you want to change it up, if you don't have kids, I don't have kids, so but I have a chocolate cat. So I might put Coco there. And she has absolutely fixed fees of going to the vet and things like that. So there's monthly expenses. Again, they're drop downs here. So if you're like, okay, I want to put like my Netflix, I want to put all these other monthly expenses, by all means, put them here. And then we've got weekly expenses. And then we've got fun and adventure. So fun and adventure, I haven't put anything in because I don't know what you do for fun. And then holiday and vacation. Okay. So those categories are all there. It will automatically calculate all the things. So basically you can start to see like, what do I need to, like, what am I spending each month? And then it gives you a total yearly total there of essentially like, what do I need to have the business fund both on a like month to month, but also a yearly basis. And then as you fill things out, like my registration would have been a fixed spend, or maybe I could review it and renew it, renegotiate it. So this just helps you kind of like get a grip of like, where is my money? Like what do I need? What would be the business like? What would it need to pay me in order to fund my lifestyle fully? And then we've got the business financial snapshot. So this one is slightly different, but same situation is we've got the core categories. So we've got team, core operations. So anything in purple is a core category. And I've got some drop downs here, but if you want to add to it, just go and add. But what I love about this is that it allows you to start to see, okay, what does the business need to make every month? What is the minimum it needs to make? And then in workshop two, we're going to start to create offers and we're going to look at our capacity, how many numbers we need for each offer so that we are funding like on an actual like realistic number. What do I need at least to break even with the business? Okay. Now, obviously, things to bear in mind are this is the number that we need after tax. And so there's like extra calculations that we'll do next week or next workshop, essentially. But this just allows you to start to see. Now, for me personally, I don't pay myself, like, I wouldn't be putting myself in here at the moment. I just want to know, like, what is my core costs first before I start to pay, like, myself or the accountant and VA and stuff. But just know that you can put them in. So that is workshop one. It has been a marathon and a half, but essentially your home play right now is to go like one, complete this playbook, and then two, go into the spreadsheet here. Oopsie daisies, don't mind me. Zoom's just doing weird things. And to fill out your personal financial snapshot if you so wish, but definitely your business one. Okay, so this one optional if you so wish. Both of them are optional. But this one definitely just to give you a pulse check on like what are my business expenses and what do I need to be generating. And then what I would love is down here is for you to think about like what were your top learnings from here. Send them send them through to me either as an email, a DM, whatever it looks like, and then any other action steps that you have beyond these three. So I've just put these three just so it's a lot easier for you to be like, what do I need to go away and do? But any other action steps, like go and put things into your calendar, your life big rocks, your business big rocks, whatever it may be. Start to map your delivery if you already have existing commitments. How are you going to be preparing for that delivery? Are there any promotional periods like your birthdays, anniversaries, mid year, Black Friday, end of year? Get all that in your calendar now. All right, big love. Thank you for being here. And I can't wait to see you on part two of the workshop. Bye.